Wonderful. All right, so let me formally again say hi to all. A very good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Ankita, and I welcome you all to this University of Manchester's webinar on an MBA for an uncertain future. Thank you for joining us today. We are living, though, truly unprecedented times, and we hope you and your families are safe and well. So let me first introduce our main speaker, Xavier Duran. Xavier is MBA Programs Director at Alliance Manchester Business School and also workshop tutor in managerial economics, strategy and competition, and business simulation. So he has a unique insight and perspective on the program. He really knows what makes it tick. You may have read his recent comments on the rise of the sustainable MBA in this year's Financial Times Global MBA ranking 2020, in which he was quoted as saying that employers want our graduates to be more global, versatile, able to navigate uncertainty, and trustworthy. So responsible business is good business too. So thank you, Xavier, for joining this webinar. I'll come back to you in a quick while. To the people who are still joining this webinar and the audience out there, I'm also delighted to introduce two Middle East alumni who are joining us today to share some of their personal experiences on Global Part-time MBA program. Zahishar is the Business Development Manager for General Motors Middle East Operations. Zahi has worked in the sales industry for 17 years, gaining experience in data, media, and automotive sales. He graduated with merit from Alliance Manchester Business School in 2015 and has been an ambassador for the school and university since 2017. Thank you, Zahi, for coming online with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Great. Moving on, our second alumni is Tim Shelton. Tim is Digital Transformation Lead for the Middle East for Global Design and Consultancy firm at Kidis. He is a seasoned construction and real estate executive with over 17 years of experience working with major real estate and infrastructure clients in the UK and Middle East. Tim's career has transitioned from traditional consultant-based roles in commercial management to strategic client-side roles focused on business efficiency and enhanced performance through digitally enabled major asset delivery. I welcome you, Tim. Thank you so much for joining.
No problem. Good afternoon, everyone.
So great. So people, Zahi and Tim will be here to answer some of our questions following Xavier's presentation, which is an MBA for an uncertain future. Clearly, there is uncertainty everywhere, and as in all periods of uncertainty, there is also opportunity for, so for example, to consider for personal and professional development and prepare for the economic recovery and potentially a very different regional and global economy. So in difficult economic times, MBA applications generally rise as candidates, they seek to accelerate their career, change the industry, or move to a more entrepreneurial path. So the right MBA can help you achieve these career goals, and this is what I believe Xavier will now explain and take this further. So over to Xavier.
Okay, thank you, Ankita. I'm just trying to put this camera and it's not working perfectly, so I'm not too sure whether you're going to see me or not. But nonetheless, just to introduce myself, as Ankita said, my name is Xavier Duran, and I am the MBA Programs Director here at Alliance Manchester Business School. And I'm sat here in my own house in Manchester because we are starting today our 4th week of a lockdown, as I'm pretty sure most of you are in your own homes and in your own countries. Good news is that it looks like many of the restrictions in our lockdowns are starting to be lifted. Our China office, and we started this crisis in China, our China office has come a long way, was the very first one to close, and it's actually now fully reopened because the situation is actually improving a lot and quite quickly in China. And indeed as well, we're starting to get quite positive news in places like Spain, Italy, France, Germany, Denmark, or even Iran, that some of those restrictions are actually starting to be lifted as we start to perhaps get things a bit under control when it comes to the coronavirus. And indeed as well, I do believe that in the United Arab Emirates, you still have a large number of restrictions, but that the situation is largely well in control by your own authorities. Nonetheless, I'm just going to be, for the next 30 minutes or so, share some PowerPoint slides and indeed guide you through, as Ankita said, some thoughts that I actually have on the value of an MBA in uncertain times. And I hope that you actually find it very useful. So, as I said, I am the MBA Programs Director at Alliance Manchester Business School. And as such, I'm responsible for our portfolio of MBA programs, which include our full-time MBA and our suite of part-time MBA programs. So that is our blended learning Global MBA, which we deliver from Manchester, and indeed our network of international centers in Shanghai, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Sao Paulo, and obviously as well from the center where Ankita is actually hosting this webinar from, which is Dubai. And we also jointly deliver MBAs with the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University in the United States, and indeed with Tongji University in China, and from the Fundação Getúlio Vargas in Brazil. In any case, our webinar today will focus, particularly what I'm going to be speaking about, on how an MBA can create value for its holders in a context of a very uncertain but dynamic future. And after my talk, and as Ankita said, we will have a bit of a Q&A session where you can actually ask me or any of our two alumni that Ankita introduced any questions that you may actually have on the program itself, or indeed about the value of an MBA professionally and personally. So I decided to entitle the webinar An MBA for an Uncertain Future. And for the next 40 minutes or so, perhaps a bit shorter, I will be making the point that being a generalist business and management qualification, the MBA, or should I say, a constantly evolving MBA, is perfectly suited more than before to give its graduates the right skills to thrive, not only to survive, but to thrive in an uncertain world. In particular, I will be focusing on a number of skills. I will be focusing on communications, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and most importantly, in my opinion, confidence. So, before we actually start with the substance of the webinar, let me give you an overview of our agenda. I will begin with a quick overview of Alliance Manchester Business School and the University of Manchester before we move on to explore what is an MBA, the historical evolution of the program, and how its generality makes it ideal for individuals wishing not only to navigate, as I said earlier, but to thrive in an uncertain business context. We will then focus on the skills that the MBAs require to thrive in this uncertainty. So as I said, communications, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and most importantly, confidence. Only then I will draw on our experience of building these skills in our MBA program here at the University of Manchester by giving you a very brief overview of our full-time and part-time Global MBA. Well, I'll possibly focus a bit more on the Global MBA. And I conclude the webinar and open the floor to any questions that you may have, as I said, of me or indeed of any of our alumni. So, created in 1824 and with more than 43,000 students and 12,000 staff, the University of Manchester is the largest campus-based university in the United Kingdom. Our world-class research puts us amongst one of the leading research institutions in the world in many fields of study. We actually count up to 25 Nobel laureates amongst our students and staff. So, no small feat here. Alliance Manchester Business School is part of the University of Manchester. It was one of the two business schools that was actually created for the first time in the United Kingdom back in 1965. We are what we call a full-service business school. That is, we actually offer programs at undergraduate, postgraduate level, and doctoral level, in addition to executive education and obviously the area that I look after, MBAs. We also produce world-leading research and have connections with commercial and non-commercial organizations absolutely anywhere in the world, globally. Ours is what we call a triply accredited MBA. That is, we're accredited by the AACSB, an accreditation body from the United States, the EFMD, which is its European equivalent really, and the Association of MBAs, making us a member of a selected group of less than 1% of business schools in the world with what we actually call the Triple Crown. And indeed, we have presence all over the world. So in addition to having some international centers, as you well know, in Singapore, in Dubai, in Shanghai, in Sao Paulo, and in Hong Kong, in addition to our premises in Manchester, we actually have a very, very, very international and global footprint. The vast majority of our students come from outside of the United Kingdom. And obviously, through our choice of electives that we allow to take, or our students to take anywhere in the world, we actually give our students truly a very global opportunity and exposure. So, what is an MBA? Now, beyond the obvious, Master of Business Administration, an MBA is a broad, a generic business and management qualification that gives its graduates a holistic and a synthetic overview of how organizations work and how we actually manage within them. Now, far from making students specialists on a subject area, like Masters in Sciences do, so for example, an MSc in Economics, or an MSc in Operations Management, or an MSc in Accounting, or in Finance, or an MSc in Marketing, the MBA gives students an understanding of all different organizational functions. So it gives us an overview of each one of those functions: marketing, operations, accounting, finance, HR, organizational behavior, organizational design. So we actually look at each one of those different areas in not too much detail. We want to get that overview. And then all of these areas are brought together with a strategy course to give a helicopter view of the organization and the links between all the different functions to be able to devise and implement strategy at the higher level. Most of the historical reasons why people are motivated to do an MBA are usually down to professional reasons and include, for instance, the fact that the MBA is a great platform if you have reached a plateau in your career and want to move, for instance, from a technical role into management. This is a typical example of engineers or people who have been pigeonholed into very specific roles within their organizations and would like to get some training to perhaps get them out of that pigeonhole and perhaps more into managerial positions or higher and more senior positions. Also, many MBA applicants are looking to shift sector or locations altogether. A good MBA should be designed to allow sufficient time and structure to explore career options. The MBA program does indeed provide a reflective juncture for students to prepare for their next move. And the MBA also develops professional and personal networks that stay for MBAs for life. Now, other reasons, which perhaps are not so widely spoken about, yet are quite important as motivators of MBAs. So, the MBA, for instance, is an excellent way to formalize otherwise experiential knowledge. In that sense, experienced individuals may wish to pursue an MBA to solidify their experience with a rigorous qualification. Also, Masters, so an MSc, is commonplace in some markets. The MBA will allow you to differentiate yourself from peers. And finally, we increasingly see entrepreneurial and innovative applicants onto MBAs. We do not look for people who recite what is in books. We're actually looking for people to create new ideas, people who can actually test those ideas. The MBA provides people with an excellent platform to explore and to test new venture ideas and to gain insight on how to bring these to market and how to finance them. So no surprise that entrepreneurship and innovation management, or venture capital and private equity, are amongst the most popular electives that we actually have in our suite of MBAs. Now, regardless of what is the exact motivation as to why people might want to pursue an MBA, every applicant will be looking to transform his or her personal and professional career. In other words, it tends to boil down to career reasons. Historically, the first MBA was offered by Harvard as far back as 1908. So the MBA has been long around, and it's now a very mature qualification. But it is indeed, still to this day, the business and management qualification par excellence, known and sought after by employers the world over. The MBA qualification gained popularity in the United States and subsequently in Europe back in the 1960s and the 1970s. It began attracting attention in different parts of the world and amongst new audiences. In this context, MBA programs, particularly in Europe, became more diverse with students recruited from different parts of the world and increasingly with global curricula. So in essence, for a long time, MBAs had been basically what we call full-time programs, very, very tailored to a very specific audience, which was an American audience. It was only around the 1960s and the 1970s, really, when Europe started getting into the MBA market, still full-time type MBA market. And it was much later, perhaps back in the 1980s, when we started witnessing a lot more diversity in the classrooms. But still, it was about people from other parts of the world coming to either the United States or Canada, perhaps, or Western Europe to undertake their full-time MBAs. However, the 1990s witnessed a proliferation of new part-time MBA delivery formats that catered for a new audience of working professionals wishing to do MBAs, but who were not able to put their careers on hold to do full-time programs. Why? Because perhaps these individuals were a bit more senior, perhaps more into their careers, with plenty of financial and family commitments. We have children, we have jobs, we have mortgages that we can't give up. But yet, at the same time, we would love to be able to do this generalist, broad Master of Business Administration, because it's actually really sought after by employers, and it actually equips us with amazing skills. So these new delivery formats that I'm speaking about, part-time formats really, opened up new markets, particularly as some regions and countries in Asia were coming of age at the time. The precursor of the Manchester Global MBA started to be delivered in these days in the early 1990s in places like Singapore, Hong Kong, and even Zimbabwe. But it was late in the 1990s, really, when the ubiquity of the internet and its inroads into higher education facilitated really the explosion of online blended and hybrid MBA delivery formats and programs. These continue to disrupt the traditional market for full-time MBAs to this day, to the extent, and I will be making the point on the next slide, that really the part-time and professional or executive type MBA market has, in essence, taken over in many respects the full-time MBA market. As it happens, much has been commented, I would say in the last year and a half, about the potential reduced interest in the MBA as a qualification. And indeed, this may be the case if one focuses only on full-time programs, and if one focuses, again, only in the United States. It's quite the different picture when it comes to part-time executive and professional programs, and indeed when we're actually looking about the MBA proliferation outside of the United States. The amount of applications to full-time MBA programs has certainly gone down in the United States, and business schools there are scrambling to recruit students from a smaller pool. Many MBA programs in the United States are even closed as competition for students becomes stronger. However, this headline hides, as I said, most of the story. One of the key reasons why applications for full-time MBAs in the United States has decreased is because of a quick proliferation of online and hybrid professional and executive type programs. Boyds & Quants, an expert organization in the area of MBAs, estimates that over 300 online MBAs, I'm not even speaking about hybrid, I'm speaking about online only, are now being offered in the United States alone. That's absolutely huge. These are obviously cannibalizing full-time programs in that country that had always historically been the bread and butter for MBAs in the US or in North America generally. Another reason includes the effects of more stringent visa regulations in the United States and the perception that perhaps the United States is not as welcoming a country to foreign citizens as it was in the past. In other words, what I'm saying is that, yes, the full-time MBA market in the United States has actually decreased a lot, but that is because people from abroad don't want to take MBAs in the United States, they're going elsewhere. And certainly, because even in the United States, there's a large proliferation of online and hybrid type professional executive MBAs, such as the Global MBA, for instance. Data from the General Management Admissions Council, so GMAT, which I show in this slide, indeed reveals the drop in application from the United States, particularly by non-US students who seem to be choosing to either go to Europe, which, as you can see, is still holding up quite nicely in terms of even full-time MBA applications, and most importantly, the fast-growing Asian business schools. In essence, overall applications for part-time or full-time MBAs worldwide are actually increasing, and are increasing very, very, very healthily. People continue to do an MBA, just in different ways or in different places. And it's perhaps in times of uncertainty like the ones that we actually live now, that more people tend to turn to education, as they actually want to use this as an opportunity to sell themselves to organizations and to their employers. This is the time, basically, to upskill yourself. So, as technology increasingly permeates wider areas of our personal and professional lives, and we hear that a significant proportion of jobs we will be doing in 20 years' time are not even yet invented, we will need to change careers a number of times over our professional lives. That is actually the key conclusion. So if there's so much change, we need to be versatile. We need to be able to embrace that change. Therefore, instead of suggesting that these changes herald a decrease in the popularity of the MBA qualification, quite the opposite, I would contend that they actually strengthen its relevance. Being a broad, a generalist business and management qualification, the MBA provides a holistic, synthetic overview of how organizations work or ought to work, and how we manage within them. Whilst this synthetic approach might be mainly framed around the context of the current business environment, the focus on adaptive skills, coupled with the critical mindset that these programs instill into their students, contribute to making MBAs very forward-looking and are ultimately the reason for its resilience as a qualification. So, what attributes do business leaders require to thrive in a context of uncertainty? What skills do business leaders require? How can an MBA qualification build these skills? Well, to begin with, and echoing some of the words that Ankita mentioned during her introduction, I would actually argue that to thrive in an uncertain world, business leaders need to have a global outlook, and they need to be mobile. That is, they need to be ready to take up position in other locations. I don't think there's anything new here. So for the last 15, 20 years, we've actually seen how mobile the workforce is actually becoming, and particularly how global it is becoming at a certain senior managerial level. So we see people moving all the time. And if you go to places like Dubai, you can actually see very, very, very clear how mobile this workforce is, and indeed how much people are willing to take up positions where those opportunities exist. Leaders also need to be and act in a socially responsible manner, as Ankita just mentioned as well during her introduction. Integrity is key here. Being opportunistic is bound to break trust, which, in its turn, will actually limit potential in the long run for organizations or even personally for anybody that is breaking that trust. But most importantly, I would actually argue that business leaders need to be versatile, and that is the key word here, versatile, particularly to be able to move and to operate in that uncertain business environment. They need to be agile and adaptable to make the most out of the opportunities produced by change. So, what skills can the MBA provide to make business leaders versatile? In my opinion, business leaders need to build communications, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking skills. Also, and probably most importantly, I'll get to this point in a moment, business leaders need to be confident. So very quickly through each one of those different skills. Communications. How do we actually build communication skills as part of an MBA program? Now, communications is not simply about you being able to speak to your employees, or it's not only about being able to present in public. Important as this may be, communications actually strand a large amount of events and opportunities where you need to be speaking to other individuals in some shape or form, face-to-face or indeed virtually, as this situation is actually really showing in the last couple of months. So it's also about being able to perhaps develop some networking skills, developing some chit chat with people that we actually don't know at all, being able to build our elevator pitches to be able to sell ourselves very, very quickly when we have an opportunity, basically to speak to somebody for less than 30 seconds and we want to cause that quick impression. But it's indeed also perhaps about being able to negotiate, being able to look after what's best for us and being able to convey ourselves as great individuals capable of holding our own. Collaboration, obviously, is about the recognition that, for example, through delegation, we might be in a position not only to gain the trust of those who report to us, but perhaps also to increase our efficiency and effectiveness. Not only will allow us to have more free time for our own personal lives, but indeed as well more free time for what's actually important at the strategic level. It's about team working. It's about looking at how not only we actually manage a team, but we actually eventually lead it. But also it can have to do with how we go about financing new entrepreneurial ideas. So for example, the idea of crowdsourcing. How do we go about collaborating with others, using technology perhaps to be able to find financing sources that will allow us to go ahead with a business idea, with a new venture. Creativity, in essence, is about trying to foster those skills that will allow us to do what computers or what algorithms will never be able to do. So yes, there's a lot of talk about automation. There's even a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, but there are many things that computers will never be able to do. And this is the realm of the human. So this is where we need to start thinking outside the box. This is where we need to start coming up with new business ideas. This is how we need to think about the strategy and so on. And finally, also quite importantly, critical thinking. So it's about how we go about relying on argumentation based on evidence, science, and reason. So it's about looking at the advantages and the disadvantages of different models, different theories, different frameworks, looking at different standpoints, different perspectives. And this is, again, where the MBA can really, really, really give you added value. You're not studying with individuals that think like you. You're studying with individuals that come from absolutely every single professional background, every walk of life, different levels of experience, different nationalities, different genders, all of them bringing a different critical lens that will allow you to really look at how different people look at specific problems, specific situation in totally different ways. And finally, let me speak about confidence. As I said, arguably, my opinion, the most important of the 5 skills that allow us to build versatility in the MBA. And we may indeed view confidence from 2 slightly different perspectives. On the one hand, we may understand it to refer to self-assurance on our own abilities. In essence, this is the traditional understanding that we actually get of confidence. So a confident person is that cocky individual that can come across very, very well, very presentable, is not afraid of absolutely anything, is very brave, can stand in public and speak to absolutely anybody. But we can also think of confidence as a belief that one can trust or rely on someone or something. Now, we may assume that becoming more confident through our MBA might refer to the first one, that is, that self-assurance on our own abilities. that more traditional approach to our understanding of what is to be confident. Important as this may be, I would actually argue that the latter, that is, confidence or trust on someone else, or most importantly, trust on something, like the opportunities that the future can bring, is as important as our self-assurance. Indeed, it's of little use to be confident in our own abilities if cynicism, if pessimism, it's on its way. It is therefore only when we're optimistic and confident about future opportunities that we can be self-assured about our abilities to seize those. So let us focus on each of these dimensions of confidence for a moment. Does the MBA as a qualification makes us confident about our own abilities? Now, in the Manchester MBA, this is perhaps the unintended outcome of our course design, our experiential approach, our admissions process, and ultimately our focus on critical thinking. It is indeed from a position of reasoned argumentation and the reassurance that we obtain from relying on empirical evidence. We rely on reason, for instance, that we can become confident in the strength of our persuasion abilities. Of course, our personality can help here as well. But no matter how quiet or hesitant students were when they started the program, they're much more confident when they complete the MBA as a result of their journey with us. Many of our students, and that is both for our full-time and our part-time programs, tell us that the MBA has made them a lot more confident to stand their ground on debate, more confident to be ambitious when applying to jobs, more confident to change the direction of their career, more confident to speak to others, more confident about speaking in public, more confident to negotiate remuneration, more confident to have difficult conversations, and yes, sometimes more confident to simply say no. I only occasionally hear from applicants who mention confidence as a motivator for pursuing an MBA, but actually I hear it quoted very, very often, if not nearly all the time, by students and graduates as one of the key benefits they actually gain from completing their MBAs. In any case, this increased confidence is actually most likely to ultimately deliver on the outcomes that motivated most people to pursue an MBA in the first instance. So I would argue that the second dimension of confidence is also incredibly important, if not even more important than the first one, that self-assurance. Remember that second dimension was that trust on others or something happening, like the positive opportunities that uncertainty can bring. As I said, again, let me re-emphasize this point, I would actually nearly assume this second dimension of confidence to be more important. In short, it's not about being confident and optimistic about the future. It's about being confident and optimistic about the future. It's having confidence on the opportunities that come from uncertainty. So coronavirus, AI, automation, trade wars, Brexit, bioengineering, fake news, climate change. It is easy to be pessimistic about the future. But I would actually argue that with the benefit of hindsight and a critical mindset, we can conclude that we have come through much worse in history, and that technology can play an important role in addressing problems. There's a lot of opportunity and uncertainty, and it is only those who are optimistic that might be able to seize these opportunities. An MBA should give students a critical mindset and produce the enthusiasm about these future opportunities. So now, let me very quickly move on to relating some of these issues to the MBAs that we actually offer at Alliance Manchester Business School. So, as I mentioned, we have 3 key MBAs. We've got our full-time MBA, our standard, if you wish, part-time blended learning global MBA with some accelerated pathways for eligible applicants, and the jointly delivered Kelley-Manchester Part-time Global MBA offered together with the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University in the United States. I will focus only on the part-time global MBA and indeed on the Kelley-Manchester MBA. But indeed, I'll be doing this rather quickly because I would like us to move on to our Q&A. If you have any questions about them, feel free to ask Ankita or the course counseling team at the Dubai Center, or indeed through the Q&A session that will follow my webinar. But in essence, our Global MBA program is what we call a blended learning program. That is, it's actually a very flexible program that allows you to complete our MBA within 24 months through a blend or a mix of face-to-face delivery, so basically 30 days plus induction, so around 31 days that you come on campus 3 times a year, and online elements that give you really that flexibility to gain a top-notch MBA without having to compromise your ability to progress with your own professional career. It is an incredibly holistic program in that rather than just trying to look at the different subject areas independently, so rather than looking at some of the subject areas in a traditional way by having a course in operations management, by having a course in accounting, by having a course in marketing, we've actually subsumed some of them to be able to give you the opportunity to look at the interdependencies, to look at the tensions, to look at the links that exist within the organization. Again, because we understand that our MBAs really want to look at joining the dots, at looking at all those connections. Therefore, for instance, we have a course on operationalizing and communicating value, which is ultimately looking at those tensions between marketing and operations management. And whilst we might be looking at what are the 4 Ps or whatever amount of Ps they actually have in marketing. When I studied marketing in my undergraduate program, there was 4 Ps. I think they have like 6 or 8 Ps nowadays, 20 years later. We still need to look at those and what are the principles of segmentation. Just as in operations management, we still need to look at the principles of putting together efficient and effective processes. However, in addition to looking at those as 2 separate functions, we want to draw your attention to the links and the tensions that exist between those 2 functions that are at the heart of absolutely every single business, commercial and non-commercial. Ours is also what we call a global program. So it's one that we deliver through our network of international centers through what we call a flying faculty model. So in essence, we actually fly in the same academics to deliver those workshops in Dubai, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Shanghai, in Sao Paulo, just as we would in Manchester. And as it happens, the curriculum is the exact same as the curriculum that we would actually deliver for our full-time MBAs, obviously delivered in slightly different ways. Ours is also a transformational program. So beyond the fact that by the time that many of our students complete the MBA, they have grayer hairs or sometimes even less hairs, ours is quite a transformational experience in that it gets you to look at the world in totally different ways. And most importantly, not only those critical skills, but it allows you to gain those communications, collaboration, creativity, and confidence skills that are so important to transform your view really of the world and how you operate within it. So our global MBA structure, very quickly, divided into 2 years. As you can see, we actually have a number of non-credit bearing interventions. So for students that actually sign up, we give them access to our Manchester MBA preparation course delivered online, which is non-credit bearing from the moment that they actually sign up, so that you can start preparing even before we start with the credit bearing part of the course in July. But in essence, we get you to reacquaint yourself with how we go about writing essays, how you go about referencing, how you go about using the library. And indeed, we also give you some understanding of very, very essential parts of business, operations management, or marketing, and so on, so that you can start getting yourself hyped up to the beginning of the program in July. Also, as I said, we have a mix of online and face-to-face elements. So in essence, you actually come in campus 3 times a year. So in the first year, you go to our campus, in this case in your home campus in Dubai, for 5 days, where you take workshops on leading and managing the global environment, the simulation project, and a welcome event, basically to meet everybody else that is starting the course at the same time as you. Halfway through the semester, so September, October time, you come again for 6 days to take a workshop on strategy and competition and on operationalizing and communicating value. And then this time next year, you would again come for 6 days to take a second 3-day workshop on leading and managing the global environment and another one on business accounting and finance. All this is actually underpinned by a simulation project that takes place as part of a group for over a year, where you actually take charge of a fictional organization competing against all other students in your cohort. And in the second year is when you get to specialize. So you start off with a 4-day residential, again, that would be July next year, where you try to look at the essence of strategic management, so strategy at the highest level, so basically that helicopter view speaking about, in addition to doing 3 electives in between semester 3 and semester 4. And obviously then you also start doing your live business projects. So as part of a group, you actually tackle a real business problem or circumstance or situation at any level, either because you want to look at how to restructure the operations of a business or how to enter a new market, or looking at the feasibility study for a new business venture. Okay, and even once you actually finish the MBA, you even have the opportunity to continue your studies, because we actually give you a complimentary elective that you can actually take 2 years or within 2 years after you graduate. And then obviously underpinning it all, you have access to our award-winning postgraduate career service, our clubs and societies organized from all our different centers, including Dubai, and our alumni socials, alumni speaker events, and many, many more events that we actually have. Very quickly also to mention that we offer our Global MBA also in partnership with the Kelley School of Business, part of Indiana University, leading to a dual award. In other words, for those of you that are interested in getting both an MBA from the United States and an MBA from the United Kingdom, this is the program for you. It actually combines elements of both our Global MBA and the Kelley Direct program that allows you then to gain a dual qualification and indeed to have a lot of flexibility to visit any of our centers. So Manchester, Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong, Sao Paulo, Shanghai, and indeed Bloomington in Indiana, and indeed as well you can even visit Washington DC to take a class on public management. This is our most flexible program yet, simply because there's more online delivery than even our Global MBA. And again, a truly transformational program that gives you access to 2 sets of faculty, so United States, Manchester, 2 sets of alumni, 2 sets of career service, and so on. Sample of electives, you name it, we possibly have it. We have over 25 electives at any one time. So electives on skills like negotiations or management in practice, but we also have finance electives, anything from strategic financial analysis, venture capital and private equity, investment and portfolio management. If you like strategy, we have international business strategy, advanced strategic management. If you like marketing, we have digital marketing, business to business marketing, a lot on digital as well. So we have digital economy, we've got information systems and digital strategy, you name it, we possibly have. So let me just conclude by re-emphasizing that the MBA as a qualification, be it part-time or full-time, it doesn't matter, has a very healthy outlook. As employers value the benefits that graduates can bring to the organization, applicants continue to apply to MBA programs in large numbers all over the world. In fact, in a context of uncertainty and a changing environment, such as the one that we actually live in, very much so, only those MBAs offering the right skill sets to thrive in this new world are bound to succeed. So business schools need to create versatile, global, and responsible business leaders by focusing on skills, including communications, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and most importantly, as I said, confidence. And by offering practical, hands-on, and innovative content suitable to the current business environment. We live in a very uncertain world, and the events that we have experienced over the last few months truly reflect how uncertain a time we actually live in, and how interdependent and global our lives and careers are. There's no better time to be versatile. There's no better time to doing an MBA. And with that said, I'll just pass it on to Ankita, who will be moderating any questions that you may have of myself or of our alumni that have kindly attended this webinar. Thank you, guys.
Great.
With that, I'll pass it on to Mike.
Sure. Thank you, Xavier. That was very, very informative. And I am sure that the people who are attending the webinar are having a lot of questions. So I'll request the audience that you can mention your questions and queries in the chat box or the question box, which you see on your screen on the right-hand side. And I will pick those questions and I'll pass it on to Xavier or the panel, whom you are directing it to. So moving on, just to reiterate for those who joined us a bit late in the webinar, and Xavier just mentioned that we do have two alumni from our Middle East Center, Zahi and Tim. So let me quickly ask a question. Zahi, this question is for you. If you can also switch on your webcam so we can have you both online. Yeah, there you go. Tim, I can see you. If Zahi, great. So Zahi, here's this question for you if you can address. Since there are many in the pool of aspirants who need help and support of a professional network, so if you can please tell us, for student and alumni, how supportive and engaging is the regional student and alumni body? And if you can also mention in continuing part that how active is student network and regional alumni association. If you can speak out a little bit about this.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi, Xavier again and Tim. I hope that everyone now is staying safe at home. So back to the question. It's a long question, but so we in Manchester, we truly believe in the code that says no man is an island. So it means that no one is self-sufficient. Everyone must rely on someone, someone's support or help to succeed. So this is one of the reasons why we encourage students and alumni to keep attending our events, our networking events, because sometimes you might meet a high potential individual who can help you manage its challenge or give peaceful advice, or it's an opportunity to meet a potential client. And that's what's happened for me personally a couple of times. So during different networking events, I met different alumni from multinationals like General Electric, from from Unilever, from L'Oreal, and we did a lot of deals together since are both alumni. On the other hand, a lot of alumni come and ask for advice, or students ask for advice. How can I do this? How can I do that? We are always happy to offer support. In parallel, most of the alumni, especially people who are working for big companies or multinational companies, help students with their final year projects by giving them assignments or hosting them or sponsoring them. And that's what's happening. That's what happened to me as well. So I got help from one of the old alumni in my final project. So yeah, it's a strong, solid connection and supportive network within the alumni.
Great. Okay, that's interesting. Tim, I have one question for you here. A while back, Xavier explained about the structure, how the modules are there and the projects are there. Like we have two projects which are a part of this MBA program. So we'll appreciate if you can also address like how do group projects work at a distance when the people are coming from different geographical locations across Middle East. And second part of the same question will be, how do students find peers to join the group projects?
Okay, great. I think the first question around, working on group projects at a distance just kind of strikes at the issue of virtual working, right? And I think we're probably all experts in that at the moment. I think the technology is there now to enable us to deliver virtual projects. And I think, one thing that technology can't give us actually is the organization of the team to enable us to deliver that project effectively. So, going back to my MBA experience, one of the key things we did was we established a project charter from day one. We aligned ourselves around the outcome that we wanted to achieve from the project. We clearly understood how each of the individuals comprising that team was going to contribute. We had a working session before we kicked off the project about identifying each other's strengths, and we had a kind of a high-level RACI matrix about who was doing what. So from day one, we were aligned around a common goal, and we were, very much understood each other's strengths and how we're going to contribute to the project. The next thing I would say is about, maintaining momentum, having a plan, having clearly defined milestones that you were going to reach as a group. Yes, there's going to be some weeks where you fall behind and work gets in the way and acts as a distraction. But so long as you can pull on the rest of the team in order to, to align yourself around that milestone and how each other can support each other in achieving that milestone, that's incredibly important. So you really, it's down to, how you manage that project really. You need to identify an individual really that drives the project, acts as the project manager, and aligns the team around that goal. I think in terms of how you find peers to drive a project, or how you find peers to help you deliver that project or organize yourself in groups, I think that really strikes around how you collaborate within the course environment. Get to know your classmates. These are going to be you're going to be entering into a network that will last you a lifetime, and that's one of the key things that an MBA from Manchester gives you. So make that opportunity, or leverage that opportunity when you're in class, when you're having those face-to-face sessions, to really get to know each other and maintain those relationships and those business relationships outside of the learning environment as well. Get to know each other in a social context. You'll actually be surprised at how much commonality you have between your fellow students. So I think once you've got to know each other, you'll begin to understand your strengths and weaknesses as individuals and what you can bring to a group dynamic, and then it should be relatively simple in many ways to, once you're set the project task, to then assemble that team.
That's very well placed. I'll put it straight. It was right on spot, Tim. You have explained. Zahid, there's another point related to what you just discussed about the alumni network. Would you also like to tell the audience, how frequent does the alumni meet occurs, and what are the routine activities they do during these meet times?
So we meet quite frequently. So additional, I think, to the monthly social gathering that we do in Dubai mainly, we do a lot of career events, like design your career plan, or how well do you know your personal brand. I think we did an annual career fair, I think last year. A lot of networking, a lot of partnership, I think, and webinar. I remember we did a couple of webinars with, help me, Tim, if I'm not mistaken, with Amar as well. Partnership with Amar, we did a webinar, digital transformation. Yeah, so on monthly basis, we meet for different reasons, regardless if this is a social gathering or a gala dinner or a webinar, or just host one of the alumni to speak about some subject. So yeah, we are strongly connected.
Indeed, it gives an opportunity for people from to come under one roof with influential backgrounds, and they grow up in their networking channels, and they build up more on their social presence as well. So
Sure.
Great, thanks, Zahi. Tim, there is a question which is coming from the module perspective again, which says that how flexible the program is in terms of personalized learning, because there was a mention of element of electives. Can you just describe a bit about this flexibility in the program?
Absolutely. I did my MBA. I actually graduated in 2013, and I think the MBA content and has actually gone on a journey itself, and there's actually a whole lot more flexibility now than I think there was when I undertook the MBA. Not that I'm saying I got the lesser experience, but I think it's certainly a benefit to new potential students who are looking at embarking on an MBA at Manchester. I think Xavier said there was up to 25 elective modules now, which is that gives you a real flexibility in taking your MBA in the direction you want to take it. From a personal perspective, my role is digital transformation and innovation lead for the Middle East business here at Arcadis. So I'm particularly interested in those modules that have that kind of digital focus on them, and that focus around organizational transformation through the lens of digital transformation. I think it's a key focus area for us right now. I think what's happening in terms of the world and the world economy is just shining a light on the fact that businesses need to be more resilient, they need to be more agile. It's about creating new business models through new collaborative ecosystem partnerships. So, a lot of this content, a lot of the content that's coming through those elective modules is incredibly relevant right now. I would say it's actually no better time to do an MBA. Just very briefly, just to reference my own story. I moved to the UAE from the UK in January 2008, and I was 28 years old. Within 12 months, I was subject to one of the biggest recessions that the world has ever seen, and I found myself incredibly inquisitive around how did that happen. How do I make myself more resilient? How do I equip myself with the skills that will enable me to move between sectors and be that agile individual? So I decided to invest in an MBA at Manchester, and I have to say it's the best investment that I've ever made, probably with the biggest return.
Oh, wonderful. That's interesting. I can see a lot of questions pouring in, so I'll just hold on here, Tim and Zahi. Xavier, there's a question for you, if I may just pass it on to you. There's a question coming asking, what are the skills and fields you recommend to master for the future to cope with changing careers in the light of coronavirus crisis?
Yeah, I'd actually echo some of the words that Tim has already mentioned. I don't think there's actually, in some regards, much of a difference between the crisis that we're actually living now in terms of what we need to thrive in it as working professionals, as the one that we actually went through in the 2008 financial recession. The idea is that what we want to develop some skills that will allow us to navigate uncertainty. I notice as well that both Tim and Zahi seem to have focused a bit more on speaking about the skills that you gain out of an MBA. May those be networking, or Tim was actually speaking quite a bit about collaboration and how you actually go about working as a group, more than the actual content. They haven't even mentioned any theory or any framework out of the MBA. This is exactly what I was speaking about in my webinar. It's about trying to be, as Tim said, as adaptable, as agile as possible. I actually called it being as versatile as possible. And whilst an MSc will actually give you that focus on a specific area, whatever that is, could actually be on accounting, on finance, or perhaps if you come from a more engineering or technical background, maybe on project management, or on a very, very specific area of aeronautics or mechanical engineering, whatever it is. The MBA is the opposite. The MBA is about looking at the big picture. The MBA is about getting you out of a silo or a very specific area of knowledge, and it's about trying to give you more broadness, more generality on your ability to navigate or to thrive in that uncertainty. And that's why I said that to be able to be versatile, we need to build our communication skills, our creativity, our collaboration. We need to think more critically, and we need to become more and more and more confident. And this is, I believe, what an MBA will actually give you. Never mind the knowledge that will actually give you. Important as it may be, any Porter's 5 forces analysis, any capital asset pricing method, or every 4 P's in marketing, as we're speaking about, you can actually just get this available for free, the click of a button from Wikipedia. The MBA will give you ultimately, and most importantly, those skills that allow you to navigate and contextualize those frameworks, those theories, or those models as to whether an organization is really using them, to what extent they are, or to what extent they are not. But most importantly, it will actually give you those skills to navigate or to thrive in that uncertain environment.
Mm-hmm. Great. In fact, Xavier, this also addresses to another attendee's query who had a concern for doing an MBA as an option at this point in time when people are either losing their jobs or are facing instability in their career. So as you wisely explained that this is the time when they can build up on their skills and be resilient for the upcoming such transitions and can pick it up. I have another question for you, Xavier, wherein person is asking, how can small and medium business protect themselves from the economic consequences of corona lockdown? Would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, very difficult question, because it depends on what sector you're actually looking at and what specific location you're looking at, because the consequences of the coronavirus pandemic are slightly different in the United Kingdom, where I live, for example, than in the United Arab Emirates. But obviously, a bit of common sense, a bit of resilience, and a lot of adaptability are always ingredients that are common to absolutely any circumstance. So it's about understanding that you need to somehow very quickly adapt to the changing circumstances to be able to be resilient. And when we're speaking about being adaptable, I mean being adaptable both on the demand side. So are you actually producing the right services or the right products? Is there something else that you could actually be doing that will be very valuable to the current circumstances? And in addition to the demand side, looking at the supply side, how can I make myself more adaptable as a business? Do I have the systems and processes in place that will allow me, for example, to variabilize my cost structure? So rather than having a capacity that I cannot fully utilize, can I perhaps reduce my capacity and make it more agile through the use of a more variable structure? So it's really trying to look at both demand, so what you actually offer in terms of your product or your service, and your supply, how you adapt internally as a business, really.
Can I add one thing, Xavier?
Go ahead, Zahi. Yeah.
I think one thing that we need to all look at, maintain cash flow at this time. All companies, they need to look at their cash flow. Try to push payments to suppliers, a little bit defer payments. Cash flow is the king now, especially at this time.
Yeah, fully agree.
Wonderful. Okay, yeah, actually that's an important element, I believe, Zai, for 365 days in a year, if you look at the wider horizon. Great. Xavier, there's one question coming up, which is, okay, it's a bit lengthy, but let me quickly grab the gist of it. It is in regards to blended learning option. Two of the most important element of an MBA is class interaction to build individual confidence, and secondly, networking with your peers. So the question is, how do you suggest we thrive in these two areas from Manchester's Global Business MBA, given 30 face-to-face opportunities during the entire program?
Yeah, I think it's actually not only what happens in the class, and I think Zahi and Tim made that point very eloquently when they actually said that it's not only about what happens in the class, as important as it may be, but what also happens outside the class. So how you actually build relations with those students, because those students are going to be a network that you will actually have not only during your MBA for social events, but you're going to have for life. And I think Zahi was also alluding to the fact that he's actually ended up doing business with many of those students that he actually engaged with during the MBA. But indeed, I've actually been in many workshops myself where I've actually seen people offering jobs to other students, and indeed carrying out deals there and there at the coffee break. So it's about using the MBA and the time that you have together as an opportunity to get to know each other a bit better. And perhaps because all of you are looking pretty much for the exact same elements out of an MBA, it's not about being ashamed in telling others, well, I actually just want to improve my livelihood. I want to improve my professional opportunities, because everybody else is actually doing the exact same. So there's no shame in you being very upfront about posing these to other students. And because this is actually out in the open, that the vast majority of people are doing an MBA for professional reasons, usually those professional reasons are actually really prioritized by all students. Zahi was also giving a bit of a flair of the type of extracurricular activity that happens at alumni level. Most of them had actually a career flair to them. How do you actually go about improving your branding? How different organizations can actually add value to them. So as individuals. So it's, again, not only about thinking of those 30 days that you actually have as part of your MBA, but also the opportunities that the MBA allow you to socialize with others during the MBA and after the MBA, because ultimately it's going to be a network for life. I'd say that that question possibly is nearly more relevant to Zahi and to Tim than myself, because they actually know what is it really that the MBA offers in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I would completely mirror that. I would mirror that sentiment entirely. I think it's the network that serves you the most, actually, post MBA. You know, and never more than it. I mean, right now it's about pivoting your business models to adapt to a very volatile and changing market. And we don't know what the world's going to look like in 12 to 18 months' time from an economic sense. And I found that over the last couple of months, more and more businesses and startups have been collaborating together to add compelling value propositions to new problems, to new client problems that actually weren't present, you know, even 6 to 12 months ago. You know, so to have that network and to have that cross-sector network, I think, where you can exchange ideas and have different perceptions on where the market is heading, that's an incredibly rich cocktail that could serve you very, very well in the future.
Okay. Great. I have one question coming for Xavier. It's about Kelley-Manchester. Is the Kelley-Manchester program courses delivered over live or recorded session?
It's actually a mix. So in essence, the Kelley-Manchester MBA is one that's got a curriculum that is offered partly by the Kelley School of Business via their Kelley MBA Direct program. So that's actually offered online. And the other half is delivered through our Global MBA from Manchester. So in essence, you actually either get to be doing some of the courses on the Kelley side fully online, but that's actually delivered synchronously, in other words, live, but online, or our blended approach for half the courses, which allows you to basically take the workshop with our Global MBAs, either in Dubai or indeed as well in Manchester or in any of our international centers.
There are a lot of questions which are coming up on the screen, and some of them are the late joiners, or they missed out the slides where we have talked about the entire structure. And there's a lot of query coming up related to eligibility criteria and the fee structure information. So for all those, the admissions team will send you an email which will have the consolidated information about the entire eligibility part and the fee structure part, so you will get to know about it. There's one question which has come up from Kevin. Xavier, I would route it to you. Is it still feasible to attend class electives from different global centers in the face of current global pandemic?
Well, at the moment, what we've had to do, particularly for the last 2 months, is we've actually had to deliver these online, simply because we had lots of travel restrictions. So we could not fly out, our academics or our students could not fly out to some of the centers. And of course, we've actually had some restrictions. For example, in China, we could not teach for a period of time. Now we're allowed to teach in China. In Dubai, your authorities actually closed down schools and universities for, I think it was around 2 months. I think at the moment they're still closed. When they're going to be lifting those restrictions, we don't know, but hopefully will be sometime next month. So obviously what we're actually doing is we're superseding what is otherwise our face-to-face workshops with virtual workshops at the moment.
Okay. So there's a question for Zahi. How did you organize your study timings along with your personal life?
Oh my God. This is the $1 million question. Well, in fact, I learned how to balance between my personal life, my business life, and my study. So I used to study around 2 hours per day, and I managed to do that with the help of my wife as well. So it's all about commitment. It's all about balance, because we need to balance between our three things. So yeah, it was quite hard, but worth it. It's worth every single moment I spend on my study.
Okay, so this is for both the panelists, Tim and Zahi. Maybe one of you can pick it up. When did you receive an opportunity after getting MBA and financially you got what you were looking for?
Come again? I didn't hear you well,
Sure.
please.
Okay, so this is the question is asking when did you receive an opportunity after finishing your MBA, the financial growth, what you were looking out for? I think that's the whole idea. The kind of a success you were aspiring after doing an MBA. So how was your journey to reach your goals?
I think for me, the immediate return on the investment was probably in the opportunities that it provided me to have the kind of senior leadership conversations that I didn't feel equipped for prior to taking the MBA. So, you know, I was able to advise on company strategy, advise on, you know, new value propositions, advise on, you know, new ecosystem partnerships for new solutions for clients, etc. And once those had gained traction, there was obviously a recognition from a seniority and from a promotion perspective. I then got other opportunities outside of my current organisation, which were more leadership, you know, based upon the proven expertise and the education that I've got, but more so on the practical application of what I'd learned from the MBA. And those opportunities have come about, you know, for the last 7 years since graduating.
Great. Okay. Quickly going on, Xavier, we have one question. Ala is asking, what human skills artificial intelligence will not be able to replace humans in performing them?
Well, we don't know how good artificial intelligence will ever become, but I don't think artificial intelligence will ever be able to supplant fully what humans do. So, for example, when it comes to creating new business ventures, how can a computer try to come up with a new business venture, something that might actually fill a gap that doesn't as of yet exist? Or how do we go about, for example, creating ideas on how we go about selling a new product or a new service? In other words, how do we actually strategize? So I think it's about particularly looking at the entrepreneurial side of things and the strategic side of things that artificial intelligence will never be able to do what humans are actually doing. Is it true that artificial intelligence will allow us to see computers doing loads of things that humans are now doing? 100%. But yet there are elements like strategy and entrepreneurship that will never be able to be supplanted, in my opinion.
Right. There's one last question I can see, which says, will be the program considered as distance learning or not? As per the program, there will be face-to-face courses. So why will it be considered if it is for distance learning? Xavier, this question is for you.
Can you repeat again? Is the question whether it's actually considered a distance learning program? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. The Walid is the person who has asked the question, and he's assuming if it's a distance learning program, why is it called? Because we have face-to-face courses. So maybe you have to correct him.
Okay, there's lots of different ways of calling MBAs that are being offered part-time. Some people call them hybrid, some people call them blended, some people call them online, some people actually call them distance learning. And again, the different definitions that we actually use might have a different purpose. So distance learning is simply a definition that we use to be able to say there is a program that can actually be done from a distance, simply because it might actually have some online elements, or because it might allow you to, for example, do them outside of a home campus like Manchester in our case, right? Other people might think of what we call a distance learning program as being solely an online program, whereas ours, we actually tend to call them blended learning. So it tends to have many, many, many different definitions, and it's very, very difficult for me to say why we call it distance learning or why we don't call it distance learning. The definition that I tend to use usually is that of what we call a blended learning program, just to make sure to make some sense of the fact that we deliver part of the elements online and part of the elements face-to-face.
Great. So there are a lot of questions, but I think we are running short of time as well. For all those who are still writing and are putting forward, yes, the recorded session of the webinar will be shared with each one of you. So you will have it as a recording for your future reference. At the same time, we will be sharing out all the details related to admissions criteria for your reference, and you can always go through the details. We are working remotely right now because of the pandemic situation around, but the entire counselors team, the student support team, all of our staff of Middle East Manchester University Middle East Center, we are remotely supporting all the aspirants and existing students. You can reach us out, you can shoot your queries to us on info.me@manchester.ac.uk. I'm going to put it in the chat box also so that it reaches you out. And and all the questions which are there, we will be sending out details individually. We have the list in hand with us. So on this note, I'll extend my thanks to Xavier for being there, sharing this thoughtful presentation and a beautiful interaction with our aspirants and students. And also big thank you to Tim and Zahi for being a wonderful panelist and contributing their experiences and thoughts with us. And thank you one and all for joining this webinar. And we look forward to address your queries and concerns you have. Stay safe, everyone, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.